My name is Rosemary Kowalski. I was born in San Antonio, Texas, at the Santa Rosa Hospital on September the 27th, 1924. We found Uncle Ben's barbecue on North Zazamora, right off of Woodlawn. The man's name was Ben Barcelona, and being we didn't know anything what we were doing, the number one thing we didn't do is we just left the name Ben's. We served beer, soft drinks, barbecue, and you can classify it as a little barbecue stand. I always called it a beer joint. So we carried 25 brands of beer, and beer was 25 cents a bottle. We'd open at 11, and you'd work till 2 a.m. So see, 11, 12, was that 15 hours? And your money, total money might be $40 for the whole day. We worked hard. We tried to do the right thing, and we always tried, my husband and I both, to give a little more than they expected, whether it was to wait on them or whether it was me to bawl some guy out because he had drank too much. I had that down as a pretty good deal so that their wives wouldn't bawl me out. One day, one of the gentlemen that lived in the neighborhood, he worked at the courthouse downtown. And in those days, people did not belong to the church in their neighborhood. They had grown up some area, so they stayed with it. Well, he belonged to the church, St. Peter's, in Alamo Heights. So he asked me one day when he was in there, when he had left from the courthouse, if I would do their church bazaar. Well, I knew that a church bazaar was that you served food. And he said, well, I'd like you to cater it. And I said, well, I'd be happy to go and help you, but what does catering mean? And that's the way I learned the word catering. Well, the business of the restaurant it slowed down. There were so many small little places, mom and pops. And as this catering progressed, because see, catering was new, no one did it. Before the war, people had maids and butlers and chauffeurs. They might have all of them. But after the war, I always say it that Rosie the Riveter didn't want to go back to working in a house. So they all got jobs outside. So the people that could afford to have dinners that their personnel used to do for them had to resolve to use catering. So that's what started us. And those were the type of people that I started serving and doing parties of 20 in their homes. Those days you used all of their dishes and equipment, and you just took the food. I was just disgusted because we weren't making any money there, and we were on catering. So in the back, by the barbecue pit, I found an old-time crowbar. I mean the real one, the big, heavy, as long as one of these poles here. And I thought to myself, there's only one way to help us, and I'm going to end this business. I got the crowbar under those wooden blocks and raised up the stools and turned the stools down, locked the front door, and said closed. And that was the end of Uncle Ben's. course, the number one person we served, and you know, is Pope John Paul. I shook his hand, and he said to me, as he said it, he was staying in the Archbishop's house, apartment. Archbishop had just a little place. And as he was leaving, they allowed all of us to say goodbye to him. And we stood in a circle outside his bedroom, and he passed by each one of us, shook our hand, and said in perfect English, "Thank you for your," I'll never forget, "thank you for your hospitality, and may God bless you." And I don't think my feet touched the ground for a week. See, he had come here from New Orleans, and New Orleans, being French, did a real fancy meals. And of course, my husband and we all, and my son, Greg, was quite involved at that time. And we wanted it to be fancy. Well, the Archbishop said no. Archbishop, wonderful man, and he wanted it to be simple. So we served roast beef, mashed potatoes, peas, and I guess apple pie. It was just a regular home dinner because we knew we couldn't get out of there. See, we stayed in the building and we couldn't leave for, I think we stayed 36 hours. And we tried to take everything that we thought he might want as a snack. And of all things, we forgot an apple. So guess what? At 10 o'clock at night, he asked for an apple. Luckily, the Archbishop had one in his refrigerator. She called him for everything after the Johnson president died. And see, he served her funeral. Greg did. And she planned her funeral 3 years before she died with Greg. Who was to come, what the tables were to look like, what food she wanted, and everything. She planned the whole thing. And all of these letters are to Greg, my son, that we framed for him to have for his grandchildren. Of course, up until before she died, after he died, she used to come to the Steves 4th of July party out here in Comfort, and we've been serving that party ever since they've had it. And she's always been there. But the thing about the President Johnson was we served him quite a few times because he'd come here to San Antonio. And I remember I was always sort of pushy with serving people. If instead of one of our servers serving, I'd go serve them myself. So I was serving Johnson and the President and I was passing a escargot stuffed in a mushroom. And as you pass, everybody take one. No, you had to stand. He was a big guy. You'd stand there and he'd just keep eating them off the tray. He didn't care. And then the thing that's fascinating, my son Greg, he bought John Conley's ranch and lived there, see, for 20 years. He's just sold it and moved. But before Greg bought the ranch, we used to do Conley's, all of his parties. And I can remember when he was running for president and I was out at the ranch, he told me, "Rosemary, someday you're going to be doing this on the White House lawn." He was a great guy. Now, the one that was fascinating too when she came was Princess Margaret. She came to the Conley Ranch, and we were working in the carport. That's the way his house was built, and we had it covered. Well, here comes this little slender lady in a very simple cotton dress walking through the garage there, right where I looked over this way. It was Princess Margaret. And it just, but what's also interesting for you people, all of you in this day and time, is to know there was security, yes, but how the world was back not too many years ago, that you felt safe. There she just walking through all of us in the kitchen instead of going around through the front door. Prince Charles was here, and what was fascinating, he walked with his hands behind him because he did not want to shake hands with anyone. But I got to speak to him because I was standing just as he looked around with that wonderful English accent and asked me, I'm sure he didn't say bathroom, I don't know the word he would have used, but I was able to show him where the restroom was. So I got to meet Prince Charles. The King and Queen of Spain were here at the matinee, and we were doing a dinner for them. And when you're catering, you're limited on what food you have. You try to remember little extras, but you don't always have everything extra that you might need. So as we were serving the dinner, her lady in waiting turned to one of our waiters and said, by the way, the Queen's a vegetarian. So we put we took stuff off of her plate. We had a hard time putting more things, but I guarantee you after that party, we always had a complete vegetarian plate. One of them did a big deal in front of the old Steve's homestead downtown. It was a big store, and we set up a whole display of food. That was the buffet that it was being televised, that this was the buffet for this party. And as we were getting ready, it was a television crew there, or movie crew, I guess. And as we started serving, the bugs started flying and coming all on the food. So they sprayed it all. They sprayed all the food and with disinfectant. So, see, what we always did when we did shots like that, we would tell the public or whoever to eat the food. Well, after they had sprayed it, our people, just as the shoot was over, had to crowd around the table because the whole place was packed with people, and they thought they'd get to eat it. And we had to just get big garbage cans and throw it all because it was all poison. It was Davy Crockett's birthday, and they were having a Davy Crockett celebration. I had made all the arrangements at the Alamo that we were serving breakfast, who was to let me in, and early, like 4 o'clock in the morning. And we got there, and it was, where the hotel is, and there's a gate, and then just up from that gate, of course, it was trying to get in. I couldn't get in. And somebody helped me, boost me, and I jumped the wall at the Alamo to get in. It hurt my back, by the way. I ended up but I made it through the party. Always give a little more than they expect, and work hard, and always say please and thank you. He is such an entrepreneur and I was a mom and pop. So what I'm trying to say, my blessing, is I am blessed to have such a wonderful son, and he has been the blessing to take over this company. And then his two children, my grandchildren, Travis and Jennifer, are with him. And then my daughter, Mary, who lives in California, is in a lawyer. I'm sure she gives her brother a few ideas, but he is really the brain and power, and that has brought this company to such a variety and to be part of San Antonio. Well, you know, I mean, I'm sure you don't know, but my main saying is attitude is everything. And you need to like people, no matter who they are, and treat them all the same. And to always see, it always comes back, work, please, and thank you. Attitude, please, work, thank you. And be kind to everybody, and always help someone. Everybody needs help, then they help you. It's so rewarding how if you help somebody else, it comes back to you.